Hey, you blue jumpsuit. Are you deaf or just incompetent? Elena Ross's voice echoed sharply through the empty hallway of the 40th floor. It was 11:15 p.m. on a Friday, and she was running on 3 hours of sleep, 2 venti lattes, and a level of stress that could power the entire Manhattan grid. The man in the navy blue maintenance coveralls didn't turn around immediately. He was kneeling on the marble floor near the elevators, focused intently on fixing a loose brass panel on the baseboard. He had broad shoulders that strained the fabric of his cheap uniform, messy dark hair tucked under a cap, and hands that were currently covered in grease. "I'm talking to you," Elena snapped, clutching her portfolio like a shield. "I put in a request 3 hours ago to have the AC turned down in the West Wing. It's freezing in there. I can't draw if my fingers are numb." The man finally stopped working. He turned his head slowly, looking up at her with eyes that were startlingly intense, a deep, piercing amber color that seemed completely out of place on a janitor. His face was smudged with dirt, and he hadn't shaved in a few days, giving him a rough, dangerous look. "The AC system is automated, miss," he said, his voice deep, gravelly, and utterly unapologetic. "It resets at 10 p.m. to save energy. Put on a sweater." Elena blinked, stunned. The audacity. "Excuse me?" She stepped closer, her heels clicking aggressively on the floor. "I don't think you understand. I am working on the most important bid this firm has ever pitched. If I don't finish these blueprints by morning, Blackwood & Co. loses a $50 million contract. So, I don't need sass from the maintenance staff. I need you to go to the basement, or wherever you people hide, and fix the thermostat." The man stood up. He was tall, toweringly tall. He wiped his greasy hands on a rag, not breaking eye contact. He didn't look intimidated. He looked annoyed, bored even. "And I think you don't understand," he drawled, stepping into her personal space with an arrogance that made Elena's breath hitch. "I'm fixing a loose panel that could trip someone, safety hazard. That takes priority over your cold fingers. Deal with it." He turned his back on her and knelt down again. Elena felt the blood rush to her face. She was trembling with rage. "You are undoubtedly the rudest, most useless employee I have ever met in this building. What's your name? I'm reporting you to Mr. Blackwood personally, first thing. Monday morning." The man let out a short, dry laugh without looking up. "Go ahead, I hear Blackwood is a real tyrant. Maybe he'll fire me. Might do me a favor." "Unbelievable," Elena muttered, spinning around. "Just stay out of my way." She stormed back toward her office, fuming. The nerve, the absolute entitlement. She pushed open the heavy glass door to the design studio, ready to dive back into her blueprints and forget the rude janitor with the intense eyes. She sat down at her desk, grabbed her stylus and tried to focus. 10 minutes passed. Elena was lost in the intricate lines of the new eco-park design when she smelled it. At first it was faint, like burnt toast, or maybe overheated electronics. She ignored it. The office was full of high-end computers. Sometimes they ran hot. Then came the sound, a dull thump, like a heavy book dropping on the floor, somewhere in the ceiling vents above her head. "Before the flames take over, quick question. What city are you watching from? Tell us in the comments right now. And don't you dare click away, because at the end I need your rating from 0 to 10. The twist coming up is going to blow your mind. You've been warned." Elena paused. She looked up. A thin, grey wisp of smoke curled out of the air conditioning vent, the same vent she had complained was blowing too cold. "Great," she whispered, standing up. "Now the heater is broken." She walked to the door to find the maintenance guy and yell at him again. But when she grabbed the metal handle of the glass door, she hissed and pulled her hand back instantly. It was hot, searing hot. Elena frowned, confusion warring with instinct. She used her sleeve to cover her hand and pushed the door open. The hallway she had just walked through wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with thick black rolling smoke. The alarms hadn't gone off. The sprinklers hadn't triggered. It was silent, deadly, and terrifying. "Hello?" Elena called out, coughing immediately as the acrid smoke hit her lungs. "Is anyone there?" A roar answered her, not a human roar, the roar of fire. At the far end of the hallway, near the elevators where the janitor had been working, a wall of orange flame erupted from the electrical closet, blowing the heavy doors off their hinges. The force of the explosion knocked Elena backward into the studio. She hit the floor hard, sliding across the polished concrete. Her glasses skittered away. "Oh my God," she gasped, scrambling to her knees. "Fire! Fire!" She grabbed her phone from the desk. No signal. The explosion must have knocked out the localized repeater. She grabbed the landline. Dead. She ran back to the door, but the heat coming from the hallway was unbearable now. The fire was moving fast, eating the carpet, the walls, the oxygen. The elevator lobby was a furnace. The emergency stairs were on the other side of that wall of fire. She was trapped. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through her chest. She was going to die. She was going to die in a design studio because her boss, Marcus, had forced her to work late on a Friday. "Help!" she screamed, pounding on the glass wall that overlooked the atrium. "Somebody help me!" But the atrium was empty. The building was deserted, except for one person. Elena spun around, looking for something, anything. A fire extinguisher, a chair to break the window. And then she saw him. Through the wall of black smoke in the hallway, a figure emerged. He wasn't running away. He was running toward the fire, the janitor. He had tied his rag around his face like a mask. His cap was gone. He was moving low, dodging the licking flames with a physical grace that seemed impossible. He reached the glass door of her studio, which was now jammed by the heat expansion. He didn't knock. He didn't call out. He took 2 steps back, turned his shoulder, and rammed into the safety glass with the force of a battering ram. The glass shattered. He tumbled into the room, coughing, covered in soot. He looked up at her, those amber eyes burning brighter than the fire behind him. "You again," he rasped, standing up and grabbing her arm with a grip like steel. "I told you to put on a sweater. Now we're going to need something fireproof." "The stairs," Elena choked out, terrified. "They're blocked." "I know," the man said, pulling her toward the back of the office, away from the exit. "That's why we're not going down. We're going up." "Up?" Elena coughed, shielding her face with her arm, as a fresh wave of black smoke rolled into the studio. "Are you crazy? Heat rises. If we go up, we'll be trapped on the roof." "Better trapped on the roof than baked in a hallway," the janitor growled. He didn't wait for her agreement. He grabbed a heavy metal drafting stool from her desk and hurled it at the ventilation grate high on the back wall. The grate buckled but didn't break. "It's reinforced steel," Elena shouted over the roar of the fire. "It won't open." The man turned to her. His face was streaked with soot, but those amber eyes were calculating, calm, terrified. Not terrified of the fire, but terrified for her. "The service shaft," he snapped. "Behind the supply closet in the copy room, there's a vertical maintenance ladder that bypasses the HVAC system. Does it connect to the 42nd floor mechanical room?" Elena blinked, her brain struggling to process the architectural layout through the panic. The chase wall?" "Yes. It runs all the way to the penthouse mechanicals. But how do you know that? That's not on the standard maintenance maps." "I read a lot," he lied smoothly. Too smoothly. "Move." They ran toward the back of the office. The heat was intensifying. Papers on the desks were starting to curl and brown at the edges. The fire wasn't just in the hallway anymore, it was eating through the drywall. They burst into the copy room. The janitor shoved the heavy copier aside with a grunt of exertion, revealing a small, unmarked panel in the wall. "Its keypad locked." Elena cried, despair washing over her. "Only senior security has the code." The janitor didn't hesitate. His fingers flew across the keypad. 77349. Beep, click. The panel popped open. Elena stared at him. That wasn't a standard maintenance code. That was a master override. She knew because she had seen Marcus, her director, use a similar sequence once. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Someone who doesn't want to die today," he said, yanking the door open. A rush of slightly cooler, dusty air hit them. "Get in. Now." He practically threw her into the dark, narrow shaft. Elena grabbed the metal rungs of the ladder, her knuckles white. It was pitch black, smelling of dust and grease. "Climb," he ordered from below her. "Don't look down. Don't stop. Just climb." Elena began to climb. Her designer heels slipped on the metal rungs. She kicked them off, letting them fall into the darkness below. Barefoot, she moved faster. Below her, she heard the copy room door slam shut, muffling the roar of the fire, but not silencing it. She could hear the man breathing hard, his heavy boots clanging rhythmically on the ladder. He was close, protective. His presence was a solid weight in the terrifying void. "Keep going," his voice echoed, deep and steady. "You're doing good. Just another 20 feet to the mechanical deck." "My lungs hurt," Elena wheezed. The smoke had followed them in, thinner here, but still stinging. "I know." Shallow breaths. Focus on your hands. Right hand, left hand, right. Foot, left foot. He was coaching her. He wasn't panicking, he wasn't screaming, he was commanding. They reached a metal platform. The janitor reached up past her, unlatched a heavy hatch and pushed it open. Light, dim, emergency red light flooded the shaft. He boosted her up. His hands were large and strong on her waist, lifting her effortlessly onto the concrete floor of the mechanical room. He pulled himself up after her, rolling onto the floor and slamming the hatch shut. He lay there for a second, staring at the ceiling, chest heaving. Elena was curled in a ball nearby, coughing violently. The janitor sat up. He crawled over to her, his movements urgent. "Let me see," he said, grabbing her face gently to check her eyes. "Any dizziness? Nausea?" "Just smoke," Elena managed to say. She looked at him, really looked at him in the red emergency light. The janitor had lost his cap. His dark hair was matted with sweat, but it was his wrist that caught her eye. As he checked her, pulse, the sleeve of his greasy coveralls rode up. Underneath, gleaming in the red light, was a watch. Not a Casio, not a cheap digital timer. It was a Patek Philippe, vintage, platinum. Elena was an architect. She knew design. She knew expensive things. That watch cost more than her entire college education. She pulled her hand away, staring at the watch, then at his face. "You're wearing a $100,000 watch," she whispered. The man froze. He glanced down at his wrist, realized his mistake, and pulled the sleeve down quickly. "It's a fake," he said, his voice rough. "Canal Street knockoff. Look, we're not safe yet. The fire suppression system in this building is offline. Did you notice that?" He was deflecting, and he was angry. "Offline?" Elena sat up, wiping soot from her face. "That's impossible. We just renovated the safety systems last month. I saw the sign-offs." "You saw the paperwork," he corrected darkly, standing up and pacing the small room like a caged tiger. "Marcus Thorne signed off on it to save budget on the renovation. He cut corners on the sensors. I told him, I heard the maintenance crew complaining about it." He slipped again. He said, "I told him," then corrected to, "I heard." Elena narrowed her eyes. "You know Marcus, the creative director?" "Everyone knows Marcus." The man spat the name like a curse. "The guy who parks his Porsche in the handicap spot and treats his staff like dirt." He turned to her. "Including you. I heard how he talks. To you. You listen to my conversations. It's hard not to when he screams at you in the hallway every morning," he countered. "Why do you stay? You're obviously the one doing the real work. Those blueprints you were yelling about. The eco park. That's your design, isn't it? Marcus can't draw a straight line with a ruler." Elena was taken aback. It's my job. I'm a junior architect. I have to pay my dues." "Dues?" The man laughed, a harsh sound. "You're paying for his incompetence. And now, thanks to him cutting the safety budget, we might burn to death." He walked over to a control panel on the wall. It was a complex array of levers and digital readouts for the building's water pumps. "What are you doing?" Elena asked, standing up on shaky legs. "The sprinklers aren't working because they're dry," he snarled, wiping soot from a pressure gauge. "The heads melted open minutes ago, but no water came out. That idiot Thorne must have shut the main standpipe valve for maintenance, to avoid paying for night inspections. He literally turned off the water to save a few bucks." He pointed to a massive red iron wheel chained in the off position. "We have to open the main artery manually. If I can crank that wheel, the gravity tank will dump 50,000 gallons onto the 40th floor." "You can't just trip it," Elena said, her architect brain taking over. "The pressure differential will blow the pipes if you don't vent the standpipe first. You'll flood the whole building, not just the fire." The man looked at her. A slow, appreciative smirk touched his lips. "Competence," he murmured. "Finally." He stepped back. "Show me." Elena stepped up to the panel. It was a mess of valves, but she knew the schematics. She had drawn them. "Here," she pointed to a red valve. "We open the bypass first. Then you trip the main actuator." "Together," he said. "The valve is rusted tight. I'll need torque. You handle the digital override." He moved behind her. His body was a wall of heat, solid and reassuring. He reached around her to grab the rusted wheel. His chest pressed against her back. His face was next to hers. "On 3, he whispered near her ear. Elena felt a shiver that had nothing to do with fear. For a second, in that dirty mechanical room with death waiting downstairs, she felt safe, connected. 1, 2, 3. He grunted, muscles straining as he forced the wheel. Elena typed the override command. Clang. A massive shudder ran through the building. The sound of rushing water roared through the pipes behind the wall. "We did it," Elena breathed. "The sprinklers are on." "Don't celebrate yet," the man said, grabbing her hand. "That will slow the fire, not stop it. And the smoke is rising through the shafts. We need to get to the roof now." He led her toward the stairwell door, but when he touched the handle, he recoiled. "Hot," he said. "The fire jumped the floors. The stairwell is compromised." "So we're trapped?" Elena's voice rose an octave. The man looked around the room. His eyes landed on the freight elevator shaft, the open, empty shaft used for hoisting heavy machinery to the roof. There was no car, just cables and darkness going up. He walked over to a coil of heavy-duty maintenance rope hanging on the wall. He tested it, wrapping it around his gloved hands. "Do you trust me, Elena?" It was the first time he used her name. Not Miss, not "Hey you." Elena. She looked at the man in the dirty jumpsuit with the $100,000 watch and the eyes of a king. "I don't even know your name," she whispered. He hesitated. "Julian. My name is Julian." He didn't give a last name. "Okay, Julian," she said, trembling. "I trust you." "Good." He tied the rope around his waist, then fashioned a loop for her. "Because we're going to climb the cables." The elevator shaft was a throat of darkness, swallowing the smoke that seeped in from the floors below. "Wrap your legs around the cable," Julian ordered, his voice echoing in the hollow space. He had tied the heavy maintenance rope around Elena's waist, securing the other end to his own harness. "I'm going to climb. You just hold on. I'll pull you up." "You can't pull my weight and yours," Elena argued, her voice trembling. She looked up at the cables disappearing into the gloom above. It was at least 2 stories to the roof mechanism. "I can," he said simply. "Now hold on." He began to climb. He didn't move like a janitor who spent his days mopping floors. He moved like a soldier or an alpinist. His muscles bunched under the dirty blue coveralls, hauling them both upward with terrifying strength. Elena clung to the greasy steel cable, her bare feet scraping against the concrete walls to stabilize herself. Below them, an orange glow began to pulse at the bottom of the shaft. The fire had breached the elevator doors on the 40th floor. The beast was chasing them. "Don't look down," Julian grunted, his breathing heavy but rhythmic. "Eyes on." "Me, Elena, just look at me." She looked up. In the dim light filtering from the roof vents, she saw his face. He was gritting his teeth, sweat cutting tracks through the soot on his forehead. He wasn't looking at the cable. He was looking at her, checking her safety every second. "Why are you doing this?" she wheezed, the smoke starting to sting her eyes again. "You could have run. You could be safe." "Not my style," he muttered, hauling them up another 3 feet. "Besides, who would file the complaint against me on Monday if I let you burn?" He was joking. In the middle of an inferno, hanging by a cable over a drop of 40 stories, he was joking to keep her calm. Elena felt a strange, hysterical laugh bubble up in her chest. "If we live," she choked out, "I'll file a complaint about your unauthorized use of the elevator shaft." "Deal." They reached the top, the mechanical deck of the elevator motor room. Julian hauled himself onto the grating, then reached down and grabbed Elena by the back of her blazer, pulling her up as if she weighed nothing. They collapsed on the metal grate, gasping for air. The floor beneath them was hot. The fire was close. "Roof access," Julian commanded, scrambling to his feet. He pointed to a heavy steel door with a push bar. "That leads to the helipad." They ran to the door. Elena hit the push bar with all her weight. It didn't move. She hit it again. "It's stuck." Julian shoved her aside gently and slammed his shoulder into the door. It rattled but held fast. He looked down. There was a heavy-duty chain passed through the handles, secured with a thick padlock. Julian stared at the chain, and for the first time, Elena saw true, unbridled fury in his eyes. It wasn't fear. It was the rage of a man who sees incompetence threatening his world. "That idiot!" Julian roared, kicking the door. Thorne chained the fire exit. He chained the roof access to prevent staff from taking smoke breaks. "We're trapped," Elena whispered, the reality crashing down on her. "We're actually going to die here because Marcus didn't want people smoking." The smoke was pouring through the floor grates now. They had minutes, maybe seconds, before the oxygen ran out. Julian looked around the motor room. He scanned the heavy machinery, the gears, the pulleys, the tool rack on the wall. He grabbed a massive 3-foot-long pipe wrench from the wall. "Stand back," he ordered. He didn't attack the chain. He attacked the hinges. With a primal yell, Julian swung the heavy wrench. Clang! The impact shook the doorframe. He swung again. Clang! The metal groaned. He was attacking it with a violence that was terrifying to watch. He wasn't just a man trying to escape. He was a force of nature. On the third swing, the top hinge sheared off. "Help me!" he shouted. Elena rushed forward. Together they grabbed the edge of the door, ignoring the heat of the metal, and pulled. The bottom hinge screamed, twisted, and finally gave way. The heavy steel door fell outward onto the roof deck with a deafening crash. Fresh air, cold, biting, wonderful night air. They stumbled out onto the roof, falling to their knees on the gravel surface. The wind whipped around them, clearing the smoke from their lungs. Below them, the city of Manhattan spread out like a glittering carpet of diamonds, indifferent to the chaos happening in the sky. Elena took deep gulps of air, coughing, crying, laughing. "We made it! Oh my God, Julian, we made it!" Julian didn't sit down. He walked to the edge of the roof, looking down at the street. Sirens wailed from every direction. Fire trucks were surrounding the building, their lights painting the neighboring skyscrapers in chaotic flashes of red and white. "They can't reach us," Julian said, his voice flat. "The ladders only go to the 10th floor. The fire is on the 40th. "The helicopter," Elena said, pointing to the H painted on the center of the roof. "This building has a helipad. The rescue team." "The wind is too high," Julian cut in, looking at the windsock whipping violently on its pole. "Standard FDNY choppers won't attempt a landing in these gusts with the thermal updraft from the fire. It's too dangerous." Elena stood up, her relief vanishing. "So, what? We just wait here until the roof melts?" "No." Julian turned to her. He pulled a radio from his belt, not a janitor's walkie-talkie, but a high-end, encrypted tactical radio. Elena hadn't noticed it before. He pressed the talk button. "Blackwood 1 to Eagle Eye. Priority Alpha. Immediate extraction required at coordinates 01. 2 souls. Roof access compromised. Fire containment failing." He spoke with a crisp, commanding authority that sent shivers down Elena's spine. A voice crackled back instantly. "Eagle Eye to Blackwood 1. We have your signal, sir. We are 2 minutes out, but the updraft is severe. We cannot land. We will deploy the winch." "Understood. Do it." Julian clipped the radio back. Elena stared at him. "Blackwood 1, who are you talking to? Who is Eagle Eye?" Julian looked at her. The disguise was falling apart. The grease on his face couldn't hide the aristocrat underneath anymore. "My private security," he said, improvising poorly. "The building owner keeps them on retainer. And the janitor has the direct line to the billionaire owner's private security?" Elena crossed her arms, shivering in the cold wind. "You're not a janitor, Julian. You wear a Patek Philippe. You know, master override codes. You have a tactical radio. Who are you? Are you corporate espionage, a spy?" Julian looked at her, and for a second he looked like he was about to tell her the truth, but then the roof beneath them groaned. A loud crack echoed through the night. The section of the roof near the door they had just broken down sagged. The fire had eaten through the support beams. "Move!" Julian grabbed her, pulling her toward the center of the helipad. Just as they moved, the mechanical room collapsed inward. A pillar of fire and sparks shot into the night sky like a volcano. The heat was instantaneous and blistering. The wind roared. And then, cutting through the smoke, came the sound of rotors. A sleek, black helicopter, military grade, no markings except a small gold logo on the tail, swooped down out of the darkness. It didn't look like a fire department chopper. It looked like something out of a spy movie. It hovered 50 feet above them, buffeted by the wind and the heat. A side door opened. A cable dropped down with a rescue basket attached. "Get in!" Julian shouted over the noise of the rotors, grabbing the basket as it swung wildly. "Both of us!" Elena screamed, grabbing his arm. "It can only take one at a time in this wind," Julian yelled back. "The cable won't hold steady with double weight in this updraft. Get in, Elena." "No, I'm not leaving you." "Elena!" Julian grabbed her shoulders. He shook her once, hard. "Look at me. I am giving you an order. Get in." The basket. It wasn't a request. It was the voice of a man who was used to being obeyed by thousands of people. It was the voice of a CEO. Elena froze. "Why?" "Because I need you safe," he said, his voice cracking just a little. "Because you're the only one who knows how to fix this building. Now go." He picked her up, literally picked her up, and shoved her into the wire basket. He latched the safety strap before she could fight him. He smacked the top of the basket and signaled the helicopter with a sharp hand gesture. "Take her up!" he roared into his radio. "Julian, no!" Elena screamed as the cable jerked and she was lifted into the air. She watched him recede. He stood alone on the center of the helipad, the fire raging around the edges of the roof, the smoke swirling around his blue coveralls. He stood tall, defiant, watching her rise to safety. As she was pulled into the belly of the black helicopter, a man in a tactical flight suit unhooked her. "Is he coming?" Elena screamed, grabbing the man's vest. "You have to go back for him. Julian is still down there." The man looked at her, confused. "Julian? The janitor? The man who saved me?" The tactical officer looked down at the burning roof, then back at Elena. "Ma'am?" the officer said, shouting to be heard over the engine. "That's not a janitor. That's Mr. Blackwood. That's the CEO." Elena's world stopped. "What? That's Julian Blackwood. He owns the company. He owns the building. And he just ordered us to prioritize your life over his." Elena looked down. Through the open door, she saw the tiny figure on the burning roof. The fire was closing in. The structure was failing. He wasn't a rude employee. He wasn't a spy. He was the billionaire she had threatened to report on Monday, and he was about to die to save her. "Go back," Elena screamed, lunging for the door. "Go back for him right now." "Turn around," Elena screamed, grabbing the pilot's headset from behind. "He's still down there." "We can't," the pilot shouted back. "Thermal warnings are redlining. The structural integrity is gone." "I don't care. That is Julian Blackwood down there. If he dies, you explain to the board why you left the CEO to burn." The mention of the name Blackwood hit the pilot like a physical blow. He cursed, banked the helicopter hard to the left, and dove back toward the inferno. Elena pressed her face against the glass. The roof was a nightmarescape. The helipad was an island in a sea of fire. The mechanical room had collapsed entirely, and the supports for the main deck were buckling. Julian was still there. He was kneeling near the edge, coughing into his arm, looking for a path through the flames. "Drop the basket!" the tactical officer yelled. "Now, now!" the cable whirred. The basket dropped, swinging wildly in the superheated wind. It hit the gravel 10 feet away from Julian. "Julian!" Elena screamed, though he couldn't hear her. He saw the basket. He tried to run, but he stumbled. His leg. He was hurt. He dragged himself up, limping, fighting the wind. Then, with a deafening groan, the helipad tilted. The roof was caving in. Julian didn't wait. He didn't run. He dove. He launched himself through the air just as the gravel beneath him gave way. His hand caught the rim of the rescue basket. Elena screamed. He dangled there, 40 stories above the street, holding on with one hand, his legs swinging over the abyss of fire below. "He's slipping!" the officer yelled, leaning. Out of the chopper door. "Wink up! Winch up!" The motor screamed as it hauled the cable. Julian managed to swing his other hand up, gripping the metal mesh. He pulled himself into the basket, collapsing into a heap of blue coveralls and soot, just as the entire roof of the Blackwood Tower imploded, sending a mushroom cloud of sparks into the night sky. Elena slumped back in her seat, sobbing uncontrollably. He was alive. 2 hours later, the waiting room of New York Presbyterian Hospital was a chaotic scene of reporters, police, and confused hospital staff. Elena sat in a corner, wrapped in a grey wool blanket. She had been treated for smoke inhalation and minor burns on her hands. Her face was scrubbed raw, but she still smelled like smoke. Her designer blazer was ruined. Her feet were bare and bandaged. She stared at the TV screen mounted on the wall. Breaking news. Inferno at Blackwood Tower. Miracle escape. Reports confirm CEO Julian Blackwood is in critical condition. Julian. "Blackwood," she whispered, testing the name. It didn't make sense. The man who had fixed the baseboard. The man she had called incompetent. The man who had held her in the dark elevator shaft and told her to breathe. He was the billionaire genius who built the city's skyline. He was the man she had wanted to impress for 3 years, and she had threatened to report him to himself. "Elena, oh my God!" The voice was loud, performative, and grating. Elena looked up to see Marcus Thorne rushing. Toward her, her boss, the creative director, the man who had chained the roof door. He was wearing a pristine cashmere coat, looking frantically around for cameras before rushing to her side. He grabbed her hands, her burnt hands, making her wince. "My poor, dear Elena," Marcus gushed, his eyes wide with fake concern. "I was terrified. When I heard you were working late, I told you to go home. I always tell my team, family first, work second. Why were you there?" Elena pulled her hands away. The rage that filled her was colder than the hospital air. You told me if I didn't finish the Eco Park bid by morning, I was fired, Marcus. Marcus laughed nervously, glancing around. Oh, stop it. You know my sense of humor. I would never. But tell me. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. The police said you were with someone. A maintenance worker? Some rogue employee? A rogue employee? Elena repeated. Yes. We suspect the fire was caused by negligence in the maintenance department. Marcus lied smoothly, covering his own tracks instantly. Probably some drunk janitor smoking in the mechanical room. Did you see who it was? Can you identify him? We need to make sure the blame lands appropriately. Elena stared at him. He didn't know. He had no idea that the janitor was Julian Blackwood. A dark, dangerous realization settled in Elena's mind. Julian was in a private room. Security had blocked everyone from seeing him. Marcus hadn't seen the CEO. He thought Julian was safe in his penthouse or out of town. He thought the man with Elena was just a nobody he could frame. He wasn't drunk, Marcus, Elena said quietly, and he wasn't smoking. Well, you're in shock. Marcus patted her shoulder dismissively. Don't worry, I've already spoken to the press. I told them how I tried to coordinate the rescue from the ground. I'll handle the narrative. You just take a few days off, heal, and don't talk to anyone until our legal team briefs you. Okay. Mr. Thorne? A nurse interrupted. You can't be back here. It's fine, I'm her boss, Marcus snapped. I don't care who you are. The patient needs rest, and Mr. Blackwood requested to see Miss Ross immediately. Marcus froze. Mr. Blackwood? He's here? He wants to see her? Yes, the nurse said. Only her. Marcus looked at Elena, confusion warring with jealousy. Why would the CEO want to see a junior architect? Elena stood up. Her legs were shaky, but her spine was steel. She let the grey blanket fall to the floor. Maybe he wants to ask about the roof door, Marcus, she said icily. The one with the chain on it. Marcus went pale. I'll be right there, Elena told the nurse. She walked away, leaving Marcus standing in the hallway, looking like a man who just realized the ground was crumbling beneath his feet. The VIP suite was quiet. The lights were dimmed. Elena walked in slowly. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. Julian was lying in the hospital bed. He looked terrible and beautiful. His face was cleaned of the soot, revealing the sharp, aristocratic features she had seen in magazines but never connected to the man in the blue jumpsuit. His arm was in a cast. An oxygen tube was under his nose. He was awake. Those amber eyes tracked her the moment she entered. You're alive, she whispered, standing by the door. Disappointed? His voice was raspy, weak. I should be. Elena walked to the side of the bed. You lied to me. You let me call you incompetent. You let me threaten you. To be fair, Julian tried to smile but winced. You were very convincing, and I deserved it. The AC was off schedule. Stop it, Elena said, her voice trembling. Why? Why were you dressed like that? Why were you fixing baseboards at 11 p.m. on a Friday? Julian sighed. He gestured to the chair next to the bed. Sit, please. She sat. I inherited this company from my father, Julian began, looking at the ceiling. He managed it from the boardroom. He looked at spreadsheets. He never touched the concrete. When he died, I realized I didn't know the business. I knew the money, but I didn't know the building. He turned his head to look at her. So, once a month, I put on the suit. I fix things. I listen. It's the only way to know what's really happening, to know who the real workers are. His eyes softened. And who the liars are. You mean Marcus? I mean Marcus, Julian confirmed. I heard him yelling at you last week. I saw your designs on his desk with his name on them. I was going to fire him Monday morning. The fire accelerated the timeline. He chained the roof access, Elena said, the anger returning. We almost died because he didn't want people smoking. I know. The tactical team documented the broken chain. It's evidence. Julian reached out his uninjured hand. He laid it on the bedsheet, palm up. An invitation. Elena, I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but up there, in the shaft, I wasn't the CEO. I was just a man trying to save the woman who yelled at him. Elena looked at his hand. It was clean now, scrubbed of grease, but she remembered the strength of it pulling her up the cable. She remembered him throwing her into the basket. She reached out and placed her hand in his. His fingers curled around hers, warm and solid. You owe me a new pair of shoes, she said, blinking back tears. I lost my heels in the elevator shaft. I'll buy you a shoe factory, he murmured. No, just the shoes. And Elena paused. Marcus is outside. He thinks you're just some rogue janitor he can frame for the fire. He tried to bully me into silence." Julian's eyes darkened. The amber turned to gold steel. The billionaire CEO was back. "He thinks I'm the janitor?" Julian asked softly. "He has no idea you were in the building." A slow, predatory smile spread across Julian's face. It was terrifying. "Good," Julian said. "Let him think that. Let him dig his own grave." He squeezed Elena's hand. "Elena, I have a proposition for you. You said you wanted to save your job. I want to offer you a new one." "What job?" "My accomplice," Julian said. "Monday morning, I'm going to walk into that office. I want Marcus to believe he's safe. I want him to believe he successfully framed the janitor. And then at the all-hands meeting, I want us to destroy him." "Us?" "You know the building. You know his negligence. You have the technical eye. I have the power. Together." He pulled her hand. "Slightly closer. We can burn him down." Elena thought about Marcus taking credit for her eco-park. She thought about the chain on the door. She thought about the heat of the fire. She looked at Julian Blackwood, the billionaire who fixed baseboards. "Okay," she said, "but I have one condition. Name it. I get to fire him." Julian's smile widened. "Done." Monday morning at Blackwood & Co. smelled like ozone and wet carpet. The 40th floor was a crime scene. Yellow tape blocked off the west wing hallway where the fire had started. Industrial fans hummed, trying to scrub the scent of charred drywall from the air. The elevators opened to a staff that looked rattled, whispering in huddles, eyes darting toward the blackened ceiling tiles. Elena walked in at 8:50 a.m. She wore a high-necked white blouse to hide the minor burns on her collarbone and a new, sharp black pencil skirt. Her hands were bandaged. She walked with a slight limp, favoring her right foot, but her head was high. "Elena," a junior designer gasped. "You're here? We thought you'd take the week off. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Elena said, her voice raspy but steady. "We have a deadline, don't we?" "The eco-park bid." "The bid?" The designer looked confused. "Marcus submitted it yesterday. He said he finished it himself after you panicked." Elena stopped. Her blood went cold. "He said what?" Before the designer could answer, a door slammed open. Marcus Thorne marched into the open-plan studio, clapping his hands like a ringmaster calling for attention. "Everyone, gather round," Marcus beamed, radiating a sickening mix of false modesty and triumph. He looked impeccable in a navy suit, not a hair out of place, the complete opposite of the chaos he had caused. The staff gathered, looking anxious. Marcus stood in the center of the room, right next to Elena's desk. He put a hand on her shoulder. Elena flinched, but didn't move. "First of all," Marcus began, his voice dropping to a somber, rehearsed baritone, "I want to thank the universe that our dear Elena is safe. Friday night was a tragedy, a horrific accident caused by—" He paused, shaking his head. "Criminal negligence from the lower staff." Elena stared straight ahead. The lower staff. The janitor. "But," Marcus's voice brightened, "we are Blackwood & Co. We do not let fire stop us. While Elena was recovering, and rightfully so, I took the liberty of finalizing the eco-park blueprints personally. I submitted the bid under my name as lead architect to ensure the client felt secure." He squeezed Elena's shoulder. It took every ounce of her self-control not to slap his hand away. "And I have great news," Marcus announced. "The client accepted. We won the $50 million contract." Applause broke out. It was hesitant at first, then louder as the relief of job security washed over the team. Marcus soaked it up, nodding, smiling, playing the hero. Thank you," Marcus said. "It was a team effort, but mostly it shows that leadership matters. When disaster strikes, leaders step up." He looked down at Elena, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Elena, sweetie," he whispered, loud enough for the front row to hear. "Why don't you go organize the Swatch library? You're clearly still traumatized. Leave the heavy lifting to us today." It was a demotion, public, humiliating, and framed as charity. Elena looked up at him. She thought about the chain on the door. She thought about Julian hanging from the helicopter basket. "Actually, Marcus," Elena said, her voice cutting through the applause, "I'll wait for the all-hands meeting at 10 a.m. I assume the CEO will want a full report on the fire?" Marcus laughed, a dismissive barking sound. "The CEO? Oh, honey, Julian Blackwood is in a coma, or close to it. The reports say he's critical. He won't be at the meeting. I'll be running it." "Are you sure?" Elena asked. Her eyes were hazel flint. "Positive. Now, run along." Swatch library. Color code. Them by texture. Marcus turned his back on her, returning to his adoring audience. Elena didn't move to the library. She walked to her desk. There was a package waiting for her, a sleek black box with no return address. It sat right in the center of her desk, untouched by the chaos. Elena opened it. Inside lay a pair of shoes. Not just any shoes. They were Jimmy Choo stilettos, black leather, sharp enough to cut glass. They were the kind of shoes a woman wore when she wanted to conquer a boardroom or a kingdom. Tucked into the tissue paper was a handwritten note on heavy cardstock for climbing out of hell and for stomping on insects. See you at 10. J. Elena smiled, a slow, dangerous smile that transformed her face. He wasn't in a coma. He was coming. She took off her comfortable flats. She winced as she slipped her bandaged feet into the stilettos, but as she stood up, the pain faded, replaced by power. The added 3 inches of height made her feel invincible. She checked. Her watch. 9:55 a.m. Time to go to work, she whispered. The main boardroom on the 50th floor was packed. Every department head, every senior architect, and the entire legal team were there. The air was thick with tension. Marcus sat at the head of the table, the CEO's chair. He looked comfortable there. Too comfortable. Elena entered the room. She didn't sit in the back rows against the wall, where the junior staff usually hovered. She walked straight to the table and sat in the empty chair, directly to Marcus's right. Marcus stopped talking to the legal counsel. He frowned. "Elena," he hissed, "this seating is for executives." "I'm comfortable here, Marcus," she replied, crossing her legs, the new stilettos gleaming under the lights. "You are disrupting the meeting I told you to organize swatches." "And I decided to prioritize safety protocols," Elena said calmly, "since that seems to be a weak point for this firm." Before Marcus could explode, the heavy double doors at the end of the room opened. Normally Marcus would have expected an assistant, or maybe a doctor. Instead, 2 large men in dark suits walked in. Security. But not building security. Private security. They flanked the door, standing silent and imposing, and then he walked in. Julian Blackwood entered the room. He wasn't in a hospital gown. He wasn't in a coma. He was wearing a charcoal grey suit that cost more than Marcus's car. His left arm was in a black sling, contrasting sharply with the white of his shirt. He had a small bandage on his jaw, which somehow only made him look more rugged and dangerous, but it was his eyes that froze the room. Those amber eyes, usually hidden behind the corporate veil or a janitor's cap, were now burning with a cold, terrifying clarity. He walked with a slight limp, but the power radiating off him sucked the air out of the room. Marcus stood up so fast his chair knocked over. Mr. Blackwood," Marcus stammered, his face draining of color. We were told you were incapacitated, a tragedy. We were just praying for your recovery." Julian didn't look at Marcus. He didn't look at the board members. He walked straight to the table. He stopped behind the chair Marcus was sitting in. He waited. Marcus scrambled out of the seat, practically tripping over himself. "Here, sir, please, sit." Julian sat down. He placed a single file folder on the table. He looked around the room, silence stretching until it was uncomfortable. Then, finally, he looked. At Elena. He didn't smile. He just nodded once. "It's time." "Report," Julian said. His voice was raspy from the smoke, which only made it sound more intimidating. "I want to hear exactly what happened Friday night, from the lead architect." Marcus straightened his tie, sweating profusely. "Yes, sir, of course. As I was explaining to the team, it was a maintenance failure. A rogue janitor. We believe he was intoxicated, working unauthorized in the West Wing. He triggered an electrical fire." "A rogue janitor," Julian repeated slowly. "Did anyone see this janitor?" "Elena did." Marcus pointed a shaking finger at her. "She was there. She confronted him earlier in the evening about being rude. Isn't that right, Elena? Tell Mr. Blackwood how rude he was." The room turned to Elena. This was it. The trap was set. Marcus had just handed her the detonator. Elena stood up. She smoothed her skirt. She looked at Marcus, then at the board, and finally at Julian. "Yes, Marcus is right," Elena said, clearly. "I did confront the janitor. He was extremely rude. He refused to turn down the AC. Marcus exhaled, a smile returning to his face. "See? Disgruntled employee. Sabotage. However," Elena continued, her voice hardening, This janitor also knew the master override codes for the fire suppression system, codes that only senior directors possess. Marcus frowned. What? And? Elena stepped closer to the table. This janitor knew that the roof access door had been chained shut from the outside, a violation of federal safety laws. He knew because he had to break it down to save my life. He broke the chain? Marcus laughed nervously. That's impossible. That door is solid steel. A janitor couldn't. He used a pipe wrench, Elena said, and incredible strength. But the most interesting thing about this janitor, Marcus, she paused. She looked directly at Julian, was his watch. His watch? Marcus blinked. Who cares about a janitor's watch? It was a Patek. Felipe, Elena said. Vintage, platinum. She turned back to Marcus, her eyes lethal. Tell me, Marcus, how many janitors do we employ who wear $100,000 watches? Or do you think maybe, just maybe, you sent the CEO of this company to burn to death on the roof? The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. Marcus looked at Julian. He looked at the bandage on Julian's jaw. He looked at the sling. The realization hit him like a freight train. You, Marcus, whispered, staring at Julian. You were... Julian Blackwood leaned forward, the predator revealing himself. I was the one fixing the baseboard, Marcus, Julian said softly. I was the one you called lower staff, and I was the one who found the chain you put on that door. Marcus backed away, hitting the wall. I didn't know. Sir, I swear it was a safety measure. To prevent smoking, I didn't know you were inside. Does it matter who was inside? Julian roared, slamming his uninjured hand on the table. Elena was inside. My staff was inside. You valued your petty rules over human lives. He stood up. And you stole the Eco Park bid, Julian added, tossing the folder across the table. It slid open, revealing Elena's original sketches, dated and signed. I saw these on your desk a week ago, but you submitted them under your name yesterday. Marcus was shaking now. Sir, please, I've been with this company for 10 years. I'm the creative director. You can't just... Julian turned to Elena. Miss Ross, Julian said formally, as the architect who actually designed the winning bid and the only person in this room who showed leadership during the crisis, I believe you have the floor. Elena looked at Marcus, the man who had belittled her, stolen from her and nearly killed her. She didn't shout. She didn't scream. She spoke with the calm authority of someone who knew exactly who she was. Marcus Thorne, Elena said, you are fired for gross negligence, intellectual property theft and endangerment of life. Security will escort you out. You have 5 minutes to clear your desk. Marcus looked around for support. He found none. The board members were looking at him with disgust. The 2 security guards stepped forward. Get your hands off me, Marcus shrieked as they grabbed his arms. Do you know who I am? I built this department. And now you're leaving it, Elena said coldly. Don't forget your coat. It's cold outside. As Marcus was dragged out of the room, screaming threats, the room remained silent. Julian looked at the board. From this moment forward, Julian announced, Elena Ross is the new creative director of Blackwood & Co. Anyone who has a problem with that can join Marcus in the parking lot. He looked at Elena, and for the first time in that room he smiled, a real warm smile that reached his amber eyes. Meeting adjourned, Julian said. Elena, stay behind. The heavy oak doors closed behind the last stunned board member. The silence that filled the room was heavy, but it wasn't oppressive anymore. It was the silence of a battlefield after the war is won. Elena stood by the table, her hand resting on the leather chair Marcus had vacated. Her adrenaline was fading, replaced by the throbbing ache in her bandaged feet and the exhaustion of the last 3 days. Julian sat at the head of the table. He looked pale, the adrenaline fading for him too, revealing the pain of his injuries. But he was watching her with an intensity that made the rest of the room fade away. You handled that efficiently, Julian said, his voice low. I had a good teacher, Elena replied, turning to face him. A very rude janitor taught me how to break down doors. Julian chuckled, but it turned into a wince as he shifted his injured arm. Are you okay? Elena took a step toward him instinctively. I'm fine. Just a few broken ribs and a bruised ego. He looked down at his sling. I suppose my days of undercover. Maintenance are over. The secret is out. Probably for the best, Elena said, walking until she was standing right next to his chair. You were terrible at customer service anyway. I was excellent at safety inspections, he countered, looking up at her. The distance between them was gone. The corporate hierarchy, CEO and director, felt flimsy compared to what they had shared in the elevator shaft. "Elena," Julian said, his voice losing the playful edge, "thank you for what you did today. Most people would have taken the easy way out. You stood up for the truth." "I stood up for you," Elena corrected softly. "You jumped off a burning roof for me, Julian. Getting a terrible boss fired seemed like the least I could do." Julian reached out with his good hand. He took hers, the one that wasn't bandaged. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. "You know," he murmured, "when we were on the roof, before the helicopter came, I was going to tell you something." "What?" "That I wasn't afraid of." "Dying?" Julian said, his amber eyes locking onto hers. "I was afraid I wouldn't get to know the woman who yelled at me about the AC." Elena smiled, tears pricking her eyes again. "Well, now you're stuck with her. She's your creative director." "I was hoping," Julian stood up slowly, wincing but ignoring the pain. "She might be more than that." He stood close to her. He smelled of antiseptic and expensive cologne now, but underneath, she could still smell the smoke and the man who had saved her. "Is this appropriate workplace behavior, Mr. Blackwood?" Elena whispered, her heart racing. "I own the building," Julian whispered back, leaning in. "I make the rules." He didn't wait this time. He leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't desperate like the moment on the roof. It was slow, deliberate, and claiming. It was the kiss of a man who had almost lost everything and realized exactly what he wanted to keep. Elena melted into him, careful of his injured arm, but holding onto his lapel like it was a lifeline. When they pulled apart, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "Dinner," he said. "Tonight. Real food, not hospital jello." "I can't," Elena said. "I have a lot of work to do. There's a new creative director in town, and she has to fix a $50 million eco-park design that Marcus probably ruined." Julian laughed. "Utility over optics. I love it. Okay, dinner in the office? I'll order in." Deal. 1 year later, the opening of the Blackwood Eco-Park was the event of the season. The massive urban garden, suspended 3 stories above the street, was a marvel of sustainable architecture. Glass walkways wove through native trees, solar panels glittered like art installations, and the air smelled of jasmine and success. Elena stood on the observation deck, watching the crowd. She wore a sleek white suit, her hair loose and wavy. She looked powerful, happy, and completely in her element. "It turned out well," a deep voice said behind her. Elena turned. Julian was there. He looked healthy, strong, the sling long gone. He was holding 2 glasses of champagne. "It turned out perfect," Elena corrected, taking a glass. "Although I noticed a loose paver near the east entrance. Someone should fix that." "I'll get my coveralls," Julian joked. "Don't you dare," Elena laughed. "You are strictly forbidden from wearing blue jumpsuits ever again. It's in your contract." "My marriage contract?" Julian raised an eyebrow. Elena looked down at her hand. The diamond ring sparkled in the sunlight, right next to the Patek Philippe watch she now wore, a gift from him on their 6-month anniversary. "Yes, Clause 4, Section B. No secret identities." Julian stepped closer, wrapping an arm around her waist. He looked out at the park, at the city, at the empire they were building together. "You know," he said, "Marcus tried to sue us for wrongful termination last month." "Really?" Elena sipped her champagne unbothered. "How did that go?" "Our legal team sent him the video of the chained door. He dropped the lawsuit in 10 minutes. "Good. He's lucky we didn't send him the bill for the roof repairs." Julian laughed and kissed her temple. "I love you, Mrs. Blackwood, even if you are bossy." "I'm not bossy. I have leadership skills. There's a difference." "Whatever you say, boss." As the sun set over the city, casting a golden glow over the park they had built from the ashes, Elena Ross finally felt warm. Not the heat of a fire, but the warmth of a future that was bright, secure, and built on the strongest foundation of all, truth. And that is how a rude janitor turned out to be the love of a lifetime. Now I have a serious question for you. If you were Elena, would you have forgiven Marcus if he had apologized? Or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let us know in the comments below. And finally, on a scale from 0 to 10, how much did you enjoy Julian's secret identity reveal? Give us your rating. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. We have a new story coming tomorrow that will make you believe in fate. See you next time.